All right, y'all. Welcome to another Gray Pages. Really excited about today. We got a couple guys that we're looking forward to kind of digging into things with. We've met these guys, Carl and Justin, through kind of through the work, through the Brave Cities network, and made some different connections. I think Carl, I want to by the way, thank you. I think he's been the most engaged person with us throughout kind of the online world, and just like so I think that might even be initially how we just like, hey, yo, you seem super engaged. Let's chat.
They
Um,
were planning to send you a number one listener button.
Yeah, because you were like our only listener. We're like, well,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
got
Well, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't
Carl.
hard to be that, but like you're that for sure. Like we're like this dude's topping the charts here, and
At least Carl was
so
like,
Taylor, I know you've like had a little bit of an opportunity to connect with these guys. Maybe like help frame this out a little bit, and then just toss one of them the ball. And I just want to hear a little bit of their own context and story, and we'll just kind of do that, and we'll roll from there.
Yeah, and I know Justin and and Hugh, you guys go back too. So Hugh, if you want to say anything, yeah, we reached out to these guys. We're almost finished with season two of the Gray Pages, and we thought, man, let's get a couple practitioners on here. Just stir it up a little bit, hear what's going on in their context. And I was thinking through, I wanted Carl because Carl's just been awesome in encouragement and asking questions and processing what's going on in his area. I think Sioux Falls, South Dakota, right? And man, part of me was just like, hey, this dude's, I think, listened to every episode. I haven't. So let's get him on and just talk about what he's doing. And maybe he can share a few things about what Brave Cities has meant to him. But then Justin came in town, what was it, maybe 6 weeks ago, month
Yeah.
ago, something like that. And we happened to connect. I had a free morning. He was spending time with his father in the afternoon, doing some sightseeing in the Midwest, and we ended up spending 3 or 4 hours together. Most of it was him helping me figure out how to not feel old anymore. His wife is a world-renowned, how do you say it? Health and wellness physician.
Yeah, nurse
That
practitioner, yeah, functional
yeah, yeah,
veterinarian.
yeah.
Wow.
And she's deep into the kind of health and wellness world and helping people heal correctly. And so I stopped talking about Brave Cities and I was like, dude, what's wrong with my elbows? So we spent most of the morning talking about that. And but then he told me about what he's doing in Lubbock and what God's been doing through him. It was kind of crazy. A few months after I left Birmingham, you ended up in Birmingham, right?
Did,
Spending
yeah.
some time there, seeing our work there. So that was just a cool connection. And immediately you came to mind, bro, and wanting to sort of tell I think we're up to 28 listeners. What's going on in Lubbock, and also just sharing how the Brave Cities language and thread and whatever is inspiring you too. So that's the episode today. You will be hearing from these guys, and we'll just be talking about everything that's going on in them. You got anything else
I
before
got
they jump
nothing. I'm
in?
just excited.
So how do we? What's the best way? Maybe Carl, if you could start and just kind of talk about where you are, why you're there, all that. Give us like your story in a nutshell.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just an honor, yeah, to be here with you guys. For sure, just connecting and after listening to you guys for like at least the past 2 years about, I think ish or something like that. And for me, kind of how my story maybe fits in this. So I was born and raised here in South Dakota, but had spent 10 years in Northeast Ohio before moving back here in the 2020 era. And we had kind of been praying a lot about when to come back, as a seed was kind of planted while we were in Northeast Ohio for us to kind of come back and sniff around, to kind of borrow Hugh's language a little bit.
So you moved
That
back during COVID.
Yeah, and we had really made that plan, and just kind of sensing the Lord like through the Spirit just placing a burden on us to, so we were making that plan like maybe 3 years prior to the move. So it wasn't like the pandemic was happening. Ohio was a little more lockdownish, you could say, than South Dakota. So it wasn't like we were fleeing, strict COVID precautions or anything like that in order to come back. But it was more so, it was the seed that kind of was planted in me during our time in Ohio was like the missional virus, the missional bug, and also community development, inner city ministry. And so in my time in Northeast Ohio, just as God was kind of really revamping and shifting a ton of paradigms for me, I really wanted to bring back those things that God was teaching me and bring those to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So yeah, that happened in 2020 when we moved on our way back here. Unbeknownst to us, it was going to be during a global pandemic.
Yeah. So you're 5 years in. Tell us how the 5 years have been.
Yeah, that is a great question. It has honestly felt like the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I'm pretty sure, I experienced
you obviously haven't worked for a mega church, bro.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, I have not done that.
My one joke for the day.
And so I was working in occupational therapy at the time and still kind of jumped back into that. And your book, Hugh, Bivo, a bivocational guide for I think Everyday Saints, something like that subtitle, was massively it formed a major part of my vision for my life and how ministry and the background that I had kind of fit together, and being able to kind of live into the community development and missional space. And so anyway, now today I work here in Sioux Falls as part of a mental health psychiatric hospital, and we live in, you could say, like a Nazareth of sorts, neighborhood in Sioux Falls, an undesirable neighborhood. Okay. And so we're kind of living out, of course, the rhythms of gospel, family, mission, and trying to link arms with other people who really have sniffed the same flower. And it's been a process of trying to find that, Brave Cities ecosystem. But I really believe we're in kind of we're at the seed stage of that. And it's been really hard, but good, especially the past 2 years, to see. I feel like God, just encouraging us with a lot of different relationships, and mission moves at the speed of relationship, which is always slower than what I want it to be. But yeah, so today we're still, trying to, I think, move toward, in a sense, that Brave Cities ecosystem and more decentralized expressions and a stronger, robust expression of the church here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. But I feel like the church in large part is pretty much held by a lot of the Christendom still, and empire a lot. I just think there hasn't been a lot of pioneers to try to blaze the trail, in a sense. And I'm sure there are some
fully living it, just having a hard time, obviously, finding 500 other people that want to live this with you, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think, finding and gaining critical mass for that, I think has been the kind of the missing piece, and finding people who really, resonate and catch the vision and have a common language. So in preparation for this episode here, and my wife and I've talked a lot about, the conversations that I've listened to, or I've sent her. And man, we just really lament not being able to have a Hugh or a Taylor or a John right here in our city that really has the same kind of vision and speaks a similar language, and gets the DNA and culture of kind of that decentralized expression of the church and the power of that. So there's some people with some alignment here, but it's been hard to get. I feel like that alignment that would allow us to maybe take the next step. But I think I really believe and hope it's coming. Yeah.
Carl, I think this is actually really important, because I know you probably wish you were further down the road, but I think in every city there are thousands of people that have just said, look, we're done doing just church. So we're gonna first just go live this. Mm-hmm. And that's such a amazing step. Most people never even take that step. So,
Man.
and I know that when you're like right where you're at, you just kind of go, phew. I mean, Taylor and I, we talk all the time. We would each quit every other day if we didn't like have each other and a handful of other people that are going, no, this is what we're doing.
Mm.
So I think this will just help a lot of people hear your story because I think there's thousands that are right where you're at right now.
Yeah, man. I think we did an episode on this. Maybe John, you can remember, and obviously the chapter in the book, apostolicing. But this part I don't talk about a lot. In 2009, I had some kind of weird encounter that didn't involve illegal drugs. I was either asleep or I was at a red light. I can't remember, but I had some sort of vision. I think it was from God. And what I remember about it, I have this written down more eloquent than I'm going to share it now, but it applies to your story, Carl. What I remember about it is rocks were falling. It was in a sort of remote, kind of mountainous region. I think, based on the vision that I had, I know all this sounds kooky, but I think it was Petra, this place in the Middle East. And rocks were falling and people were running and they were looking for refuge. And this was actually, for me, the moment that I knew I was leaving. And I heard some things, like I heard in my heart, I heard the Lord's leading. I saw cities being constructed. And this was the moment that I decided I was leaving full-time ministry, vocational ministry. And what I think I heard, or what I guess was stirring in my spirit in that moment, was the church as we know it is going to crumble, whether it's by law or by culture or whatever. I don't know. Zeitgeist, the season changing. All I heard was the church as we know it is going to crumble, and the kingdom seekers are going to be running from the falling rocks looking for cities of refuge. And that was, man, that was like the origin story for me. That was when I read Revelation 18, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, come out of her, lest you take part in her sins. Where the righteous prosper, the city rejoices, which the first time I ever heard that was from Hugh, not the Bible, strangely enough. And so, I mean, it was less than 6 months later, I resigned, and we started doing what you saw in Birmingham, Justin, and started kind of architecting the language and the vision of Brave Cities. Here's why I bring that up, is because we wrote this book calling for the pioneers and the Ephesians 4 apostles, the ground layers. I think, I don't know you at all, just kind of disclaimer. None of us have ever met Carl. We've talked online a few times from his encouragement and his engagement, but we don't know his story. We don't know anything until today. What I do know is there are kingdom seekers everywhere looking to live and to kind of embody their lives within these brave cities, within these kingdom ecosystems. And it's not a formula. There's no math to it. It's art. It takes certain types of gifting, certain types of covenant, certain types of people that we tried to kind of uncover through the journey of this book. So yeah, man, we've also called them ark cities, with the imagery of like the flood coming and people looking for a place where they can find refuge and community and all of that. So we really, I love that you're kind of sharing this and unpacking this, because more and more we want to call people to say, hey, we need you in these places, in these contexts, to uncover the kingdom with others who want it there. So yeah, we'll talk more about that. Justin, I like your story a lot, man, because this happens to us a lot. You've been doing this a lot longer than this book has been going. And obviously we say that. I think even in the very beginning of the book, we say this is an ancient story. We talk all the time about how brave cities have been happening since the book of Exodus, or since the garden, and will continue to happen until the holy city comes down in all its, all the jewels. So we want to hear kind of what you've been doing, I think for 7 or 8 years or more in Lubbock. And yeah, man, just kind of weave it all together if you can.
Yeah, man, for sure. So, man, I was in ministry, kind of prevailing model, kind of worked in all sizes, mega churches, little churches, rural churches, all of it. And there's always a stirring, like, man, there has to be something more, something that's just kind of longing for something more robust, something that I just longed to experience and see that I wasn't experiencing. And so about 12 years ago, we stepped out, and in that, like, that was kind of missional stuff was beginning to pop off, and the Verge conference down in Austin was starting. And so there's lots of conversations. I read some of Alan Hirsch's first books, became friends with Lance Ford. And so I was hanging out talking to Lance, and he's like, hey, you need to read this book by Hugh, or hey, you need to go to Birmingham and check out these guys, or hey, you need to go to Tampa Underground. So Lance Ford was kind of always a good kind of director and pointer of like, hey, go check this stuff out. Yeah. So he was always huge as Transgenesis. And then with that, just trying to figure out what resources where I learn and connect. So 3DM was a little bit part of those guys for a little bit, learned some stuff from them. And then about 12 years ago, started this idea of creating this network of house churches that got together every once in a while. And as we're figuring it out, we felt called to a specific part of the city. And so it's called the Heart of Lubbock neighborhood. We didn't know that was what it was called. We just heard the Lord say, hey, if you want to see the heart of the city change, you have to start with the heart. And so we moved to this neighborhood, probably second, third highest crime rate regularly in the city. And once we moved here, we realized it was called the Heart of Lubbock neighborhood. And we opened up a coffee shop because that's what you kind of did when you wanted to be missional back in the day.
Say again what it was called.
The Heart
of Lubbock neighborhood.
Heart of Lubbock.
Yeah, so it's called the Heart of Lubbock neighborhood. And so we moved there, opened a coffee shop. So a buddy of mine actually owned this coffee shop, a guy named Justin Bernard, owned a coffee shop. For several years, he closed it down. And so I bought the name and the rights in a storage building full of stuff for a little bit of money, and then reopened it in this neighborhood. Had no freaking clue what I was doing, owner of business, running a business. But it became this beautiful little thing. And so we actually brought in some other owners. We ended up selling it back in November. So we had that for about 10 years. So it was a huge part of what we were doing in the neighborhood, in the city. As we were there, we moved to this neighborhood, opened the business. I started officing out of this old church building that was right behind the coffee shop. And they had a nonprofit, and they asked me to take over executive director of that. And so it became this weird thing where we began to merge kind of what we were doing with the stuff some ministries that were already going on in the neighborhood. And now it's what I love about Brave Cities. It's given definition to things that we've been doing, but had no way to put terms around it. Right. So there's been this building ecosystem of, we have like this little network of, we call them kingdom communities, like house churches, simple churches, dinner, whatever you want to call them. Right. And then we have these things we call them kingdom causes, where kind of the nonprofit doing specific focus ministries. And then a lot of us have other businesses. And so we have kingdom commerce. So this whole thing, we call it kingdom co-op. And there's like these kingdom communities, kingdom causes, kingdom commerce. And it's trying to figure out how all this is interrelated and connected. And you guys, honestly, y'all's book was huge on giving some clarity for us on what that looks like and how we begin to piece some of this stuff together, because we were just trying to figure it out, right? Like all of a sudden these things are beginning to happen, and we're like, I don't know what's going on, what's happening. We have these really cool communities that gather together. We do some really cool stuff in the neighborhood of typical like clothing closet, feeding our friends in the neighborhood, after school program, like those are going on. And as this has played out, we've been in the neighborhood 10 years now. And dude, it's been really cool to see collaboration begin to happen with the city. So, and then that old church building I was officing out, they actually gave that to us. So we have like this 28,000 square foot building. And so right now we have 16 other agencies or ministries that are in that building that use it for different things. So we have ministries that like work with kids that have aged out of foster care. We have other support groups that work with women that have like experienced domestic violence. We have a couple of different college ministries. We partner with the prayer room here in the city. And so it's just been really this cool thing. It's begin to like create a place of unity in the city that's you don't see a lot, especially kind of West Texas Bible Belt. Like we live in the world of competition. And so it's cool where at our community meal on a Sunday night, we're feeding our friends in the neighborhood, and I'll have one group over here. My charismatic friends are praying healing, right? And then I have another kind of group that they only read King James Version, serving the food.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but they're in this space together, loving our friends in the neighborhood. And so it's been really cool to see how that's played out as well. And there's a couple of businesses that are in our building as well. And sometimes I wish like, I don't know, I wish there was a roadmap to this thing. And I've learned there's not.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, all I heard from the Lord way back in the day was, hey, I want you to have this. It was a neo-monastic kingdom distribution center.
Yeah.
And when I say that, most people have no idea what that is. I'm still trying to figure out what that means, what it looks like. But it's kind of what the Lord told me lots of years ago.
Yeah.
But I think what Taylor said is like, this is nothing new. This kind of communities have been going on for centuries.
Right.
And so how do you rediscover something that's been there? And then how do you kind of begin to piece things together?
Let me say one thing that I think is always so fascinating to me. If someone was to hear your story, they would almost think, well, these guys had to have collaborated because look at how similar their language is and this and that. But I was having coffee with a friend yesterday who had just gotten back from Lebanon. And he was over there seeing some of the war-torn areas. He's former military. He wanted to kind of just be present, see how he could help. It was sort of a mission kind of thing, but also just going to feel the pain of all that's happening. And one of the things he asked me, he's like, how could the Brave Cities philosophy transfer into a place like Lebanon or somewhere overseas in general? And without hesitation, and this is how I would respond almost in any context. And I know we talked about this in one of our episodes, and I'll get to that in a second. When I say almost in any context, there's no contextualization of Brave Cities, of Kingdom Ecosystem. The contextualization is of the tables, maybe, the innovation in the context that you're in, as far as like how to connect with the people in their rhythms. The reason that your story sounds so familiar to ours and so familiar to so many others that have come before us is because it's just life. Mm-hmm. You don't have to necessarily teach a young person how to live their life. You teach them the proper way. You teach them virtues, but they're going to figure out life. Life pretty much happens the same everywhere. You live and you work and you spend time with people. You have community, you have commerce, and you have your home where you lay your head, your first place every night. And so the idea is more, we want to architect a subtle subversive ecosystem to empire in those spaces. So I don't care if you're going to Lebanon or to Ghana or to Manhattan or to Long Beach, California. You're going to live, you're going to work, and you're going to spend time with people. When I said almost every context, we always marvel at the fact that the context that this never seems to work are the places where men and women have kind of actively and consciously sought to avoid the poor, where they've gone to say, I don't want to be in the presence of the poor. I want to move my life to where I don't have to encounter them. For whatever reason, we could talk about the kind of the biblical nature of why, the presence of God, Matthew 25, all that. That's not this episode. But that's fascinating too, is that Jesus doesn't seem to move much in that space where you go, I'm moving away from the poor on purpose. But other than that, man, it's just, there's no contextualization of the kingdom itself. It comes in your context. The contextualization is of the tables that you kind of construct or architect in that.
I think you're right, man. I think, and one of the things we're battling against is this idea of dualism. And so when you get this idea of dualism, of some things are sacred or holy versus others aren't, or this is more. And then, I mean, you think about that's kind of one of the earliest heresies that Paul was fighting in the New Testament, was that idea of dualism. Like some things are more spiritual than others, right?
Right.
And so when we get rid of that idea of dualism, we're able to say, no, like you're saying, Taylor, like all of this is life, and it's all interwoven, interconnected with one another. So why do we try to separate it in this idea of why not just living life and building relationships with people?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hey, John, let's fire some questions at these guys that maybe some listeners are maybe wondering. So Justin's pretty established. I'm assuming Justin, stuff's presenting itself all the time. There's always like some new ideas, and so there's quite a bit of inertia, it sounds like right now. And you got Carl that's struggling it out in the trenches,
tilling the soil. Yeah.
Yep.
Hard soil.
By the way, Justin, question for you. In your apostolicing, that first year was like me. I didn't know anything about coffee. Like you just kind of, there's always like something that's presented to you that kind of kicks things off, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like your connection in the city helped out? Like, was there a lot of relationships? People knew what you were doing, and so you ended up having an easier road getting stuff presented to you, or?
I think so. I think with the relationships, especially with this guy, Justin Menard, who owned it before, like we were hanging out talking, and he was kind of mentoring me in business. Like, I have this idea, this thought, and he was like, let me, here we go. And it was kind of like, bro, here, I believe in you. I believe kind of what's stirring. Let me help you. But it was out of that relationship with him that happened.
And that, just so people know, sometimes you watch ecosystems that tend to go really quickly. It's 4, 6, 7, 10 years, and there's something there. And there probably is some element of that when there's, Carl, you flew back in, during a time where everybody had their blindfold on and their face mask. So, but that might be a little bit of a clue when we're apostolicing early on. Somehow we've got to find where the movement is. You look for the deer trails, and it's more meeting people that might be in the know or might be connected. So anyway, for whatever that's worth. John, you got any thoughts hitting you between these two stories?
Well, I have a ton of thoughts, but like one of the things that stands out, maybe using the framework you had, is like we've got two interesting places in a story where you got like kind of early stages archaeology, kind of figuring things out and kind of feeling that like hard work, but the isolation. And then also like you said, like established and kind of have built out something pretty impressive over a period of time that's bearing fruit and doing well, as like
all the way to architecture. Yeah.
Yeah. On the architecture side. Exactly. And so like, I'll throw both these thoughts out because I guess you can, either one of you, as you want to, answer either of these, how they fit. Cause I wanted to ask in general before we started these stories, it's just like how our conversation has resonated, inspired, impacted, whatever, like what stood out to you. And both of you kind of named a few things. So I'll just repeat back what I heard as like a way as prompt this question, but you can take it wherever you want. So there's the idea of like feeling alone or isolated. And like, am I crazy out here? Am I on my own? And like, I know even as we have these conversations, even finding folks like you, like part of the reason for the book and the podcast and the things we're doing is like almost putting out like a call so that we can find one another, because the reality is at like the builder apostolic level, like that's even in places where there's a ton of community at that level, there is a lonely isolation. Even if you got a massive community around you, there's like a certain weight you carry where like, I can't overstate the value of these guys, even though they're across the country, that we have access to one another. And we're trying to like build a little bit of a network of folks that are like cut this way. So finding one of there. So the question there is like about the value of like the broader network, or having like not being crazy or alone. And then I guess this related to Justin. You had what sounds like a pretty solid language of your own, but then you said like, and I've used the what I said that I thought the book really did was give a lens and a language to what we're like. It's like it crystallized something we felt, but it was hard to articulate. All of us had like, and I heard that in what you were saying. So like and so I just wanted to like, for both of you, thinking about like the broader network or community, and then also like the value of a lens and a language, and then like what in that has been helpful, inspiring, impactful. Hopefully that's clear enough of a complex question.
So question one, how important is the network?
Mm-hmm.
Question two, how has the book provided a lens and a language?
Yeah, but yeah, so the lens, like you named that, but then like what's the impact of that, the effect of that? The like, I know for me, like all of a sudden something crystallizes and I'm like, oh, I can go so much further with this now because I know what words I'm using, something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah. So for me, I've been lucky enough to be able to have I have great relationships with the guys at Forge, right? So like those guys have been a huge part of just helping us as we're figuring this stuff out. So Terry and Roland and John, like those guys have been huge for us. And then even I went and spent some time, I went through like a movement school in Tampa back in the day. Like, and so there's been these things connecting with, and it's always been this, these are beautiful, great things that are going on and I get to see and be around, but like, how do I live this out true to my culture and context?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for Brave Cities, there's a sense of, you guys, like, it's not a formula. It's not anything else. It's like, there's something that's stirring and brewing in your city. And so how do you steward that without trying to be formulaic, trying to do something that somebody else is doing, but you're just being obedient to what the Lord's stirring. And then you're just having eyes to see what's going on. And so and also with that, like, this idea of a kingdom ecosystem, because a lot of guys, you might be working in a prevailing model of church, trying to get them to become missional, or you might be doing whatever else, but it's a different thing when you're building out an ecosystem that's broader than just this one little area. And so for me, the language of Brave Cities is, I'm not just trying to start missional communities, right? Like I'm looking, the Lord's placed some ideas of like businesses that do some stuff, or some of the things. And so what I love is that it's not a narrowed in focus, but there's a broader kind of reach of what's going on in a city versus is it making sense? Sorry.
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay.
I mean, it really is. So we use the language a lot, moving from centralized to decentralized to distributed.
Yes.
Or decentralized and distributed is a good kind of combination. But that distributed is pretty important because that's the idea of an ecosystem.
Yeah.
If we're just talking about decentralized,
I would say, Taylor, with that, I've had to learn too, this idea of a bound set and a center set. You guys and so what does it look like in a distributive ecosystem where we can still have a center set focus rather than having this bound set? And that's been something we've had to learn, is if we can get everybody kind of in this idea of, hey, we're still all going towards the same thing, and there's not a hard boundary around this.
Sure.
It's been good.
Think of it this way too, like in you might call it a decentralized thing, like we might use the aspen tree as like an illustration, but it's all aspen, right? It's a root system underneath, but it's the same exact thing. It's an aspen tree. A distributed means you're going to have an aspen grove. You're also going to have some pine. You're going to have some elk. So that's sort of the idea. It's so varied. It's so people have asked me, because back in the day, I got pinned into just the house church thing, missional community. Alton, when they go, well, what's different? I go, oh, it's way different. It's just, there's still that going on, but it includes so many more sort of feels and smells and whatever of what we're doing.
I think even another metaphor, kind of botanically, you could say, it's cool to get people to kind of plant their own gardens, to grow their own food. But I just think a forest is stronger. I think a distributed grove of root systems and what's the idea you always kind of bring up, John?
Permaculture.
Permaculture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just the permaculture idea. All of this is important in the language that we're trying to unpack. Is we're working for an ecosystem, a interconnected community that's not just these little pockets of good works. That's nothing wrong with that. That's great. With you, Carl, I think I'd love to hear if this is, out of the blue. So if you need a second to process it, but I'd love to hear you. You mentioned early on, my wife and I have lamented if we could have a Hugh or a Taylor. How important do you think the role is of that kind of apostolic figure, not just as an individual, but as like a presence and a spirit to pioneer something?
Yeah, man, incredibly, incredibly important. I feel like we had manifestations of that, or people that filled that role for us in Northeast Ohio. And yeah, it's just been a wilderness here, locally anyway. But yeah, most of those roles have been filled by people I know of, like you guys, or other organizations that are doing some similar stuff. Just to kind of pony a little bit on what you guys are saying botanically, and I felt like this was a kind of a prophetic thing from the Lord when you were talking about a forest. It sprung a thought in my mind, and my parents still live on a farm west of town, about a half an hour, and around a lot of farms you're going to have a lot of tree belts. And these tree belts just kind of protect the farm from, just usually weather related events and things like that, just to because there's a lot of wind out here, out in the Dakotas. And so in my parents' shelter belt, as I've kind of been back here and been helping them out with just kind of cleaning it up back there, I've noticed that there's only like 2 or 3 maybe species of tree back there. And there's some kind of a blight or a bug that's going around and is killing off these trees, probably has been for the past 5-10 years, because I'm seeing these massive trees falling down, and because they've died and they can't stand anymore. And so I felt like from the Lord, it was kind of like as I was reflecting on that one day while I was out there, that it's kind of like a picture of the kingdom, or of the church, in having a diversity of churches or expressions, or distributed networks, like you guys are saying, and just the importance of sticking in there in order to see more health. Because when you have more diversity of trees in a shelter belt or forest, you're going to have a lot more protections against the storms or the bugs, or any threats, I guess. And I think that it probably applies to the church.
Think about, Carl, if you were trying to build an ecosystem, but all you shared was hey, my wife and I are doing mental health stuff, and we live in this part. You're going to have a hard time finding a critical mass that all want to do mental health stuff, right? I mean, that's like a really hard road. So whatever our thing is, we have to remember we're not trying to reproduce our thing.
Yeah.
We're not trying to reproduce coffee shops or mental. We're doing what God's asked us to do, but we got to find people that want to link together all these kind of unique, creative ways of living and doing life. So.
So someone in our city who I feel like is doing that is a couple. Moses and Pusada are their name, and Moses is a part of the Kunama refugee community here in Sioux Falls. And I feel like of any pocket of people in the city who are living a Brave Cities kind of way of life, but may not know it, it's the Kunama refugee community here in Sioux Falls. And what my relationship with Moses and Pusa has developed is maybe you're hinting at, that distributed kind of element.
Man, I'm really glad you said that. I was as you were talking, I was thinking, what is the primary, what's the secret sauce pathway that I would tell anyone if they're in a situation that Carl is in, where they're just dying for this type of Brave City life. Again, without knowing your story at all, I remember a conversation I was having with some friends in North Alabama a few years ago. And same story, years, 7 to 10 years of wanting this, kind of pursuing it, but not necessarily having that apostolic figure. And my encouragement to them was get as close in life and life rhythm, get as close to the poor as possible. By the poor, of course, meaning the ones who don't have options in your city, the marginalized, the outcasts, whatever. And that seems to be, hear me right here, but like for all of you listening that are kind of in this moment of, I've been here, I want this. We don't necessarily have anything stirring. We don't necessarily have a Justin Stice that can just snap his fingers and something new will start. And that's real, Justin. Like even being around you, I was like, yeah, you got that thing, man. And that's a gift. It's from heaven. It's nothing to be proud of. It's something to be stewarded, but that's not everywhere. I would tell anyone, go be shoulder to shoulder with the marginalized. You're going to see things start to happen and start to kind of be uncovered in your everyday life. But and I'll end this point with this. With my friends in North Alabama, they didn't want to do that. They wanted to kind of go in and out, maybe do some ministry. Does that make sense? Like maybe do some mission work on a Thursday night, pick up a guy that needed a meal, all of this honoring to God, great, virtuous, pure, whatever, but not what I was encouraging them to do. So even bringing that community up, I forget who you said, I forget their names, but I would say, man, just go and be with them, be near them, try to do life with them. And I think you'll start to see some things. What do you think about that, John?
Well, I was going to say the exact same thing for different reasons. So I always have this, like, I don't know, this way in which I'm like, you have like we see these like signposts toward the dream of the kingdom, and we don't always, it's not always clear. It's like we're looking off in a fog, but it's like it's that way, and we're kind of making our way. And we see things in our cities that are clearly not that way, right? We see things, and so in my mind, I'm like, and by the way, some of this really overlaps with like churches and Christian stuff and what we see like Bible Belt stuff. And it's like a lot of times you're like this thing, and not just to pick on that, but in all like looking at the city and going, this is not pointing toward the kingdom. And I go, okay, so that's the kind of thing we want to be an obstacle to. We don't want to fan those flames. We don't need to go to war with those things, but we don't want to fan those flames. And then we see things that resemble it. So you said like they're like living it, but they don't maybe use the language, or they don't know it, or they have even another faith tradition or whatever it is. And like, to me, I'm like, we want to jump in on those. We go like, when you it's a treasure buried in a field. It's like, if it smells like the kingdom, if it looks like it's pointed in that direction, it is. And like, that's where you want to lean in. So like, I think Taylor's right. There's probably overlap with the poor throughout the earth, or with people in recovery, or with like all kinds of captivity, communities of like necessity. I think you see, because that's where you find social security in the sense we look out for each other. It's where you find sharing. It's where you find unbelievable stewardship of resources. But like, that's like a lens that I think about, where I look at any place and go, what resembles it, and then go get in on it. Like joining other tables is actually a perfectly appropriate path, where we don't need to build and set all of them.
Yeah, which can be incredibly difficult, can cause some major identity crisis, Carl. Again, you probably know all this, you've experienced this. It can cause some serious kind of need for reflection, figuring out what our own biases are, what our own kind of preferences, tribal preferences are. living a life like this, not just a Brave Cities life, but saying, I'm going to go, you know, place myself in a culture, in a context, and among a socioeconomic class that I'm not accustomed to, might be one of the most difficult decisions anybody can make that look like the five of us. So, but I actually think it's kind of the secret sauce. Like it might be the one, I don't think it's a silver bullet, but I think it might be the one pathway where I could go, hey, if you keep hitting a wall, go here. They'll teach you. You'll find Jesus here in a way, like the presence of Jesus in a way you've never found before.
I just want to affirm this because, I mean, we moved to this neighborhood 10 years ago. My family thought we were crazy. My in-laws thought we were crazy. Like, what are you doing with my granddaughters? And so my oldest daughter's about to graduate. And this whole thing has been like, are we screwing up our kids by making this? Like, that's been one of the biggest concerns that we've had. Yeah. And my oldest, she shared one of the letters she wrote for a scholarship. And she talked about one of the moments in life of like growing up in where we do, like being embarrassed, right? Of the neighborhood, the part of the city. And then, because all of a sudden she had all these friends that are super wealthy and like all these things. And she was like, man, I was embarrassed for my friends to come to our house, or we have beautiful, all the things. But where we lived in the city was really difficult for her for a long time.
Yep. I got it.
Now she wrote this letter, scholarship letter, and the Lord, she's like, now I just know like the beauty that's come from how we live our life. And so like to have my daughter, the senior, writing a part of her scholarship letter of how this has been one of the major transformation moments in her life, of going from being embarrassed as a middle school kid to being thankful and grateful of the experience of having our friends that are experiencing homelessness in our house, having, praying healing for our friends, or her dad being known as the neighborhood pastor. We go to any convenience store and but for her, it was huge as a parent, be like, okay, hopefully this didn't screw her up. And she's gotten to experience and be a part of something really beautiful that most middle-class white girls will never get to experience, to be a part of.
That's awesome. Hey, can I go a slightly different direction just for a second? Justin, you're at what, 12-year mark right now? We are seeing some themes, obviously, because we're finding ecosystems around. There seems to be in that 8 to 12-year mark. That's where it's like the beginning where Carl's at. That's tough. Like the 8 to 12-year mark gets tough because you're tired. You've done a lot. Sometimes there's infighting or need for relationships to change, whatever it is. We are at year 8 or 9, and we went through kind of you could see like, it's about to get rough, and then kind of a second reboot happened for us in this last year. So big new projects, kind of a reboot of what we're doing at the Post, new businesses. So I kind of feel like that leapfrog, like we're going to be okay now for another season. But at the 12-year mark, how are you feeling right now? Do you feel like, is there an exhaustion? Is there like, because people like Carl are trying to get to where you're at, but we notice that it gets dangerous around year 10. Is there anything that resonates in that with you?
All of it, dude. It's been weird. So last year, just kind of context, we got a grant from the city for almost $700,000 to redo this building. And so like I played GC, and I'm a horrible general contractor. And so that personally was a lot to take on. But then, in the last 7 months, we lost 2 of our leaders. So one of our friends, Danny, he was a tattoo artist. He had a thing called Tattoos and Testimonies. We lost him back in October. And then a couple of weeks ago, we lost a guy that has a thing called Barn Church. He lost a heart attack. And so with the combination of doing big projects and then losing some pretty important leaders, we're in this very liminal space of trying to discern and figure. And then also with that, there's just, when I read the letters that Paul wrote, I feel the pain of dealing with the struggle of people, right? And all the messiness of it. And so we are in the middle of it right now, dude. And some days I'm like, holy, are we going to get through this? I think we are. I hope we are. But it's just like, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's how it feels. It just feels like it's a lot. And it feels just like you're not sure it's going to work with the first coffee shop. And now you got a lot more people, a lot more things. So a lot more can actually fail.
This is a little bit of a curveball, but I was having this conversation with my kids a couple nights ago because some big changes are happening with my oldest son, and just like some pathways that he's going, and I think Hugh, I've seen this embodied in his journey and in his life, probably more than anybody that I know. But what I was telling them is, if you look for stability and security in this life as far as kingdom, you're going to be incredibly disappointed. In fact, I would say one of the primary false promises of empire is I will give you security and stability. I will make you feel secure and stable. And how that empire stream has kind of what's the word I'm looking for? When two things intersect. I don't know, but it's intersected itself so much into Christendom, Christianity, the process of building the church or making disciples in such a way that I honestly feel like it's gone, because that seems to be the primary narrative of kingdom work is let's build something that's stable and secure. So I was just telling them, I was like, look.
And that will keep growing all the time.
That like both things. Yeah. Stable and secure. But we got to keep growing. We need more people, more money, whatever. And I just told them this, I said, and this is why I referenced Hugh earlier, is I do think God has given us not completely across the board. Paul is an example of someone that seems exempt from this, but for the most part, a good generalization is we can find stability and security in our family, like in our biological family. And when you have that, and then we can find it in a community of people. But even those things can fail us. And I referenced Jesus's teaching where he said, foxes have holes, birds of the air have nests, but Son of Man has no place to lay his head. I think what he was saying was, if you're going to follow me in this kingdom pursuit, I can't offer you security and stability. But we can find it in these little wins with our spouses or with our friends or with our children. Here's why I bring that up, Justin, is the lie for guys like you, leaders like you, is get this thing stable and then you'll be satisfied. And we realize somewhere along the way, year 12, year 14, it's never going to be. It doesn't matter unless I go back in to Babylon.
Yeah.
Coming out of her is the process of accepting instability in the works that we do for the rest of our life. Yeah. And we just feel this constant state of it's going to crumble tomorrow. Like I lost this guy, and this guy. I mean, we even here right now, Hugh could tell you 2 or 3 things could happen. I'm not talking about catastrophic. 2 or 3 small things and everything here's over. Everything we're doing is done.
Dude, that gives me so much. It's going to sound horrible. That gives me so much like assurance that I'm not the only one. Like it's all like right? Every day I wake up and I'm like, all right, if this goes and this goes, like we're done.
It's over. Yeah. And I directly tie that to what Jesus was saying. And the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. He wasn't saying he was homeless. That's a weird interpretation of that teaching because everybody knows 6 blocks away was his mom's house. He had somewhere to lay his head. He was giving us an idea, a secret into this. I'm a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, because I have no security here. Yeah. I know that everything I build could deteriorate if Peter denies me 3 times. or if this guy does this, or if this group says this. John, I see you chomping at the bit, so jump in. But I think it is for our own sanity. Even with you, John, like you're the wildlife this dude's living in Tampa. You gotta have, just for some degree of sanity, you gotta have something to go, I find stability in this. Now, the wildest of us, the bravest of us, just find it in, the ethereal, find it in the presence of God in their own life. And I'm for that. But man, I'm here to tell you, a lot of times that isn't even enough for me.
No.
I need my wife, I need my kids, I need my buddy. And I got to go, hey, I need you. I don't care what I do. If you find out I'm a serial killer, I need you to just come visit me in prison. I need some type of stability because nothing I'm doing kingdom wise feels stable.
Yeah.
You use the you just said, like, if you can do X, Y, and Z, if you can get this to this point, then you will be satisfied. And as you talk about this, like the inner kind of stability that can transcend the like instability and chaos that is the life that we're called to live. For me, I was just like, man, like there's just, I just want to put my finger on that and be like, the importance of being satisfied. Like if there's anything about like almost being satisfied in the existing relationships, in the existing work, in the chaos, like that this actually is the, like, as you coming out of Babylon and coming out of the promise of security and coming out of all of those constructs is being called into the wild, but it's it's to be satisfied in the wild, embrace the process. Like that satisfaction can't be, I just think like it's deadly to have any outcome oriented need. Like we can't need
love the work,
anything.
love the work.
This is the end. The end is the work. Like the ends are contained within the means, and we have to enjoy each step of it. And if anything we're doing is born out of like, just so I can like, get to this place where I'm going to be okay. It's like, well, then you're not okay, and pump the brakes on that thing. I just think we've talked about it before, but I just think it's such an important drum for us to be beating, that none of us at any part of if we're at day 1 or year 12 or wherever we're at in that journey, it's like, we're on that journey, and hopefully that journey is an eternal one, but that you're in the place.
I like the way this conversation went today, because what we're trying to provide is a much larger distributed network of stories that people can find. So Justin, I'm glad people got to hear you're at year 12, and maybe people will find you that are, in that stage and go, look, I need some help right now. I just need a word. And Carl, there's going to be many more that are where you're at. And that's all we want. We know it'll work out at some point. But I love, John, what you were just saying. It's like the love of this has to be literally the process. Taylor's always stuck in some miserable job that he's trying to do. I'm stuck, building out a pizza joint right now in our business. And, Taylor comes in, sees me bent over doing stuff I don't like to be, doing, caulking, baseboard, whatever. But at the end of the day, I was even with one of our main leaders the other day, and we were just joking like, oh, we're back here again, building out a silly little business. But we both smirked like, this is what we love. And it's not even whether or not the pizza will sell. It's like, it's just a constant, hey, this is what's been presented for us to put our hands to. And it is a big mystery. I love the mystery. That's where I get. I just go, it's kind of fun to see if this thing's gonna.
Yeah, we love the mystery. We love the mystery, and we hate the lie, man. The lie is there's some place to arrive here. Yeah. I think of you, Carl. Like you could move here, and you and your wife, your family. I think you would enjoy the community here. I think you would enjoy it. I don't think it would add much to your life because you're a worker. You want to till, you want to plow. There are people, most people, this is what I think Jesus meant mostly, by the way, when he said the narrow and the wide stuff. Most people want to spectate, bro. Mm-hmm. They want to go and find something to sit in and enjoy. And they're not. So that's the cool thing about a kingdom ecosystem. Here, very little are they going to find that satisfies them. That's why most people that come here to spectate, they get really frustrated at our community and at our leadership. They get bitter because they're like, you're not giving me what I thought.
Yeah, we're unresponsive to spectators.
Right.
But
and
if they want to dive in,
they want to pick up. There's a guy,
day.
the Lebanon friend I was with yesterday, kind of newcomer to our community, probably, 5 or 6 months. He's just thriving.
Yeah,
It seems.
He's dove. He literally is anything that we needed. He's like, let me help.
I just want to work.
Yeah.
Give me a shovel. That's his like mantra. Give me a shovel. What are we doing? Yeah. And it's not in some kind of leg humping way either. It's just, I just want to work. And he's thriving. Yeah. But I can't, the spectators have been countless, and I'm talking about great human beings, great men and women, virtuous men and women, but they just want to come and kind of be fed or whatever you want to call it. And it's always disappointing. So my point to you, Carl, is you're in a context where the harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few. If we love the work, it's like, oh, great, I'm here. Yep. But still, because we feel insane all the time, I'd like a little stability. Throw me a bone, God. Like, I'd love a buddy to just have a drink with. So I was just telling my kids the other night, and we can kind of land with this. This was my point is, hey, pray that God gives you the gift, because you have it in me and Mom. We're here. We covenant to you. We're going to be stable for you the rest of your life, or the rest of our life. But pray that God would give you the gift of finding a little, just a hint, a glimpse of stability in this life. We see it in Paul. He writes this letter at the end. I think he's in prison or something. And he just asks a couple buddies to come see him. And I think he's asking for some sense of stability. He's like, hey, will you bring me a blanket? Will you bring me something to read? He's kind of like, I just want to taste something right before I get my head cut off. All of us have that. We want to feel sort of like grounded, because Justin, we know everything we've worked for, our life's work, is on the thinnest ice you can imagine. One decision, one financial mistake, one death, one corrupt situation, it's all over. And I think we actually should be able to find a little joy, like levity in that. Yeah. None of this, all this is smoke, bro. John, if John leaves Tampa tomorrow, I can tell you the majority of what they're doing is going to start to unravel. Not because he's this phenomenal leader, but because it's just how it is. Everything we do is kind of unstable. I mean, some of it'll last, some of it'll sustain, but that's just the way that this work goes. And we got to find contentment in that. And the way we do it, Hugh says all the time, we'll be complaining about something we're doing. And he's like, I can't believe I'm this old and I'm still hustling. But actually, that's the secret, is praise God, I'm this old and I'm still getting to hustle. Because most people at my age have found a way to coast. Man.
A little pickleball.
I pity.
Margaritas at 2.
I just want to affirm that. Yes. So, dude, what's been my saving grace through all this is I have a group of guys. We have whiskey night most every Tuesday night. And on my back porch, and that has been like the sustaining thing, where I have a dudes that I don't have to be anybody for. Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm just there, and we're there. And so it's like having that group, and not like with my family, that was great, but like having a group of dudes that I'm just able to be just real and honest and raw and just all the things has been like probably one of the biggest sustaining factors of long-term, like living this. And so Carl, it's for me. You didn't. I hate when somebody gives me advice and I didn't ask for it, so I apologize, Carl. But man, that I would suggest, man, finding a group of dudes, people that are in this with you.
Yeah.
They don't have to be in it, but just that are for you.
Yeah.
But also that you're for them. And there's like this sense of just being with people, not feeling alone, because feeling alone and isolated is one of the, I think that the fastest killers to this kind of thing.
Carl, why don't you kind of close us out? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I just got two things really quick. Thank you guys for all of your insight too, and those things that you share. I genuinely appreciate it. I just had a quote here from page 40 of the Brave Cities book here, which I thought was appropriate and just kind of dovetails right into what you guys were saying. And it says here, for most ecosystems, it's like finding bread on the trail as you wander in the wilderness of a mission. But as you slowly uncover the kingdom, people will slowly build things that matter, and tables will be added where people will find new life in the kingdom. So I feel like that combined with
that's beautiful.
That's a good book.
That is beautiful.
So I feel like that combined with John 15:5, just abiding in the vine, we will not do any freaking thing apart from Jesus. And so, man, if it matters, it's Jesus has got to be in it. And I just really have such like core to the bones and core to my heart. Like, I believe the best days are to come. The best days are to come.
Yeah.
Hey, it's great having both you guys on. Thanks for what you're doing. And hopefully there'll be a lot of encouragement for others by hearing you guys' story. How do we find, John, how can people find what Justin's doing in Lubbock, and Carl, if they want to commiserate with Carl, how can they get a hold of him?
Why don't you guys throw out how you'd like people to be in touch, and then we can just like put it in show notes or something.
Or you may not want anybody to call you. You can say that too.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Justin.
I just got my personal like social media, like Facebook, Instagram, just Justin Stice. And then kind of the organization is Kingdom Co-op.
Okay.
So yeah, kingdomco-op.com. And that's kind of the little website that we have that has some stuff on there. So
great.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Carl Olson, Olson. And then I'm doing a little writing on Substack a little bit here and there. So if people want to look me up, there you go.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Oh, I did write a really crappy book last year. But
what's your crappy book called?
Whole Mess to Wholeness. And it's about the whole thing of like finding wholeness in Christ. And so how do we live and how do we pursue health in our spirit, soul, and body and live from a place of wholeness?
Okay. Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Appreciate you guys.
Stay
in touch. Thank you.
Appreciate you all.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.